This is the story of a migratory shorebird, the western sandpiper. This small bird is under threat. Why? Because the Vancouver Fraser Port Authority, known as the Port of Vancouver, is planning to build a second container terminal at Roberts Bank, right on top of the bird's critical habitat. Inconceivable! If the port realizes its plans, the western sandpiper and millions of other shorebirds will be at risk. The chain of the Pacific Flyway will be broken, and migratory birds will have lost a stopover site that is critical to their very survival. Western sandpipers are tiny. They weigh about as much as a first-class letter. Their entire species inhabits the Pacific coast of the Americas. Every year, they make a journey of about 10,000 kilometers to their breeding grounds in the Arctic. They use a route called the Pacific Flyway. It runs from Central and South America through San Francisco Bay, Grays Harbor, the Fraser River Estuary, the Stickeen River, and the Copper River Delta before finishing in Alaska. Intertidal estuarine mudflats occur at each site where the sandpipers stop to feed. They feast on a nutritious microthin layer known as biofilm. It contains tiny diatoms that grow like plants as a result of solar energy. During a period of rapid growth, the diatoms become stressed. Their growth slows and they bloom and produce rich omega-3 fatty acids. For western sandpipers, it's these blooming diatoms, creating a green wave along this migration route, that provide their essential food source. For some reason, the port is ignoring this green wave and would even have us believe that building Terminal 2 would add biofilm. This is simply not true. The life cycle of these shorebirds is centered on hitting this rich source of energy and nutrients at precisely the right time. When western sandpipers make it to the mudflats of Roberts Bank each spring, it's one of their last stops before returning to their breeding grounds in western Alaska. And the unique biofilm they find here becomes super rich just as the birds arrive. Not all mudflats are equal. Western sandpipers are very selective about where and when they feed. It takes a unique combination of water temperature, salinity, and tidal flow to create the rich biofilm that provides the nutrition the birds need. This is why the birds prefer Roberts Bank and Brunswick Point specifically. Even on Roberts Bank, not all sites are equal. The feeding window is also critical. Some sites on Brunswick Point are better than others because the mudflats where the birds feed are exposed for longer periods of time, allowing them to take in greater amounts of the fuel they need. As part of its proposal, the port had to include scientific data about a number of topics, including birds and biofilm. Environment Canada recently commented on the port's science. They were blunt. They did not agree with the port's conclusions. Environment Canada believes that this project has potential adverse effects for several species at risk, as well as for shorebirds and diving birds. In particular, Environment Canada believes that this project will have adverse impacts on the biofilm due to predicted changes in salinity. Environment Canada says the impacts will be permanent, irreversible, and continuous. For the last 20 years, western sandpiper numbers have shown a decline of around 2% per year. This is due in part to the industrialization of the bird's critical habitats. Terminal 2 would be built on a new man-made island. The widened causeway will cover over and destroy existing biofilm. If Terminal 2 goes ahead, the western sandpiper species will be at risk. Protecting birds is not new. Canada and the US have been doing it for 100 years, beginning with the Migratory Bird Treaty of 1916. Canada's Environmental Protection Act contains a number of key principles. One of them is the precautionary principle. It states, "Where there are threats of serious or irreversible damage, lack of full scientific certainty shall not be used as a reason for postponing cost-effective measures to prevent environmental degradation." This project puts the Roberts Bank environment at too much risk. The choices could not be more stark. Either the federal government turns down the addition of a second container terminal, or Roberts Bank Terminal 2 gets built. It breaks the chain of the Pacific Flyway, destroys mudflats and wetlands critical to all shorebirds, and risks the western sandpiper species with permanent, irreversible, and continuous destruction of their critical feeding grounds. Don't be misled by the port's economic argument. Canada's trading needs are being met by expansion at other West Coast terminals. Prince Rupert, for example, has huge potential, and its expansion is costing less than half the cost of Terminal 2, which, if built, would be one of the most expensive port developments anywhere in the world. Call to action. To Vancouver Fraser Port Authority, abandon plans for Terminal 2. To the public, write to your politicians. To the Cabinet, insist that Vancouver Fraser Port Authority stop Terminal 2. To the media, investigate the port's science. To our friends in the USA, these are your birds more than ours. Help us save them. Western sandpipers spend more time on your coast than here in Canada. They breed exclusively in Alaska in the summer. Intervene. Force Canada to live up to the promise made over a century ago. Tell your legislators to save your birds before it's too late. Remember the words of Thomas Lovejoy, the father of biodiversity. If you take care of the birds, you take care of most of the environmental problems in the world. This is why we want to save these little guys from extinction.